What's your favorite dark humor joke? Losing my virginity was like my first football game. It hurt a lot. But at least my dad came. What's the difference between a school and an ISIS hideout? I don't know. I just fly the drone. If only Africa had more mosquito nets, then every year we could save millions of mosquitoes dying needlessly of AIDS. From Jimmy Carr. A doctor comes in to see a woman who's just given birth and says, "I've got some good news and some bad news." The woman says, "Okay, what's the bad news?" The doctor says, "Your baby has red hair." The woman says, "Okay, what's the good news?" The doctor says, "He was stillborn." I recently got this nice dog from an animal rescue shelter. All was fine until one day. He bit a kid in the face. Sadly, we had to put him down. He probably would have told his parents. What's the worst thing about raping a deaf girl? Having to break all of her fingers afterwards so she can't tell anyone. How does an Ethiopian family celebrate their child's first birthday? By laying flowers at their grave. A sociopath, an arsonist, a necrophiliac, a zoophile, and masochist are all sitting outside in the recreational area of a mental institution. The zoophile happens to notice a stray cat clawing its way up a tree. He says to the others, "Hey you guys, let's go duck that cat." The sociopath says, "No, no, no. Let's duck it and then torture it." The arsonist smiles and says, "I think we should duck it, torture it, and then light it on fire." Grabbing his crotch, the necrophiliac says, "After we duck it, torture it, and light it on fire, we can duck it again." As the four look longingly at the cat, the masochist opens up his mouth and begins to speak the only word he needs to say. Meow. What's black and sits at the top of the stairs? Stephen Hawking after a house fire. What is the #1 cause of pedophilia these days? Sexy kids. I'm kidding, of course. Pedophiles are just ducking immature assholes after all. From the master of dark humor, Frankie Boyle. I lost my virginity to my mother's best friend, my father. It was the only time he ever told me he loved me. Who are the worst drivers? Christians. All you ever see are crosses on the side of the road. 3 strangers are swapping stories at a bar. One of them pipes up, "I once found a woman tied to some railroad tracks." The men around him are like, "No way." Like in an old western, the guy says, "Yup. I was on a walk near my house and I found a woman tied to some railroad tracks. So obviously I untied her. And since I wasn't far from home, I decided to take her back there for the time being. I sat her down on the couch next to me, and we started getting a little handsy. After all, I just pulled her off some railroad tracks. And then before you know it, we're getting really hot and heavy. Like right there on the couch. And before I know it, we're having the wildest, kinkiest sex I've ever had. I mean, she was getting into positions I didn't even know existed." The other guys at the bar say, Wait, back up. Not only do you find a woman tied to the railroad tracks, and not only do you have sex with her, but it turns out she's a freak? Tell us more about this girl. What color eyes did she have? What color hair?" The guy replies, "Oh, I don't know. I never did find her head." "Why did Sally drop her ice cream?" "She had no arms." "Why did Sally fall off the swing?" "She had no arms." Knock knock, who's there? "Not Sally." "How many babies does it take to paint a wall?" "Depends on how hard you throw them." "Not dark so much as really gross." "What did the leper say to the prostitute?" "Keep the tip." What's the difference between Jesus and a prostitute? In my experience, the prostitute doesn't come back to life after 3 days. What's the difference between a fully packed freezer and a baby? A fully packed freezer doesn't scream when I slam my meat in it. What worse than a bee sting? 2 bee stings. What's worse than 2 bee stings? The Holocaust. What's worse than the Holocaust? 3 bee stings. Knock knock. Who's there? Steve. Steve who? Steve begins to break down in tears, as he realizes his grandma's Alzheimer's has progressed to a point to which she no longer recognizes him. A Mexican, a Jew and a colored guy walk into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "Get the duck out of here." A priest and a rabbi are running out of a burning kindergarten. Priest? But what about the kids? Rabbi? Fuck the kids, priest. You think we have time? What do Terry Fox and Hitler have in common? Both can finish a race. Disclaimer: Terry Fox didn't technically run a race. What's the difference between a pizza and a Jew? A pizza doesn't scream when you put it in the oven. What's the best thing about ducking 25-year-olds? There's 20 of them. What's the worst thing? Getting the blood stains out of the clown disguise. A man is playing with his daughter in his backyard, and notices that she just smashed a butterfly on a flower. Because of this, the man says, "Just for that, you can't have any butter for a month." The next day, she kills a cockroach in the kitchen. "Nice try," says the man. Squaring numbers is just like women. If they are under 13, just do them in your head. Bo Burnham. A farmer calls an architect to build a new house. He can do whatever he wants, but 2 trees need to remain because they remind him of a nice time. The architect is curious and asks about the first tree. "The first tree? There I made love for the first time." "And the second tree?" The mother was watching. The architect was shocked. "What did the mother say?" "Moo." Did you know the fastest readers in all of human history worked in the World Trade Center? They could go through hundreds of stories in mere seconds. Posted this before, but here you go. There was this old Jewish man who won the lottery after a lifetime of poverty. Overnight he went from dirt poor to a millionaire. He could have spent his riches on any conceivable thing in the known world. Yet the first thing he buys is a 20-foot-tall golden statue of Adolf Hitler and erects it right in his front yard. Understandably, his neighbors were very upset at this, and it ended up drawing national media attention. A slew of reporters waited outside the Jewish man's house, waiting for him to come outside so they could try to snag an interview with this man. Eventually, he makes his way outside, and one of the reporters asks him with all due respect, "Sir, why on earth would you erect this giant statue of Hitler? With your heritage as a Jew, we would expect that Hitler would be the absolute last person you would want to honor." The old man says, "Well, it's my way of saying thank you to the man that made this all possible." He stops talking for a moment and rolls up his sleeve, exposing his forearm. "Because, after all, he did give me the winning numbers." 2 blunts fall into a well. One says, "Isn't it really dark in here?" The other says, "I don't know. I can see." My girlfriend came home and saw me ducking our daughter on the dinner table. I don't know what shocked her the most, me having sex with our daughter or that the abortion clinic let me keep her. All of my favorite dark jokes are about Jonestown, but nobody likes them since the punchlines are too long. What do you have to do when your mother-in-law is stumbling through your backyard? Shoot again. What's the difference between a picture of Jesus and the person? It only takes 1 nail to hang the picture. My parents sent me to Catholic school as a child. The nuns, they were vicious. They would hit me, smack me, anything, to protect themselves. What happens when you put a baby head first into a blender? I don't know. I was too busy masturbating. Getting a woman to spread her legs is like spreading butter on bread. You can do it with a credit card, but it's easier with a knife. What's the difference between a pile of dead babies and Ferrari? I don't have a Ferrari in my garage. What would George Washington do if he were alive today? Scream and scratch at the lid of his coffin. Note: works with any dead person. I used to be a sadistic necrophile with a penchant for bestiality, then I realized I was just beating a dead horse. You think everything is going okay until the nurse comes in to tell you that your favorite Avenger is here. A pathologist on his first day at work is approached by his boss wheeling a trolley with a corpse on it saying, "I'm going for lunch. And when I return, I want you to tell me how this woman died." An hour later his boss returns and asks the new guy for his findings. "She drowned," he says. "How did you figure that out?" asks his boss. "Well, she's got a prawn stuck up her vagina," the pathologist replies. "What?" replies his boss. "Show me." So the pathologist removes the sheet from the body, spreads the deceased legs and points between them. "That's not a prawn, you idiot, it's her clitoris," shouts his boss. "Well, it tasted like one," the man replied.